Hey everybody, Adam here. Hope everyone is doing well. It's a little bit windy today, but I know that some people are eager for this video, so we're just going to run with it. Hopefully the audio is not complete trash. If it is, well, I'm still going to publish the video, so sorry about that. Lots to talk about here. I'm going to try to move through it quickly. Might not get to talk about everything, but let's just go right into it. So first, let's talk about the general concept of this and what this is. I am calling this a Gabion Wainscot. It's a portmanteau, if you will, of Gabion wall and wainscot. It is not a true wainscot in the traditional sense. Typically a wainscot is a wooden panel that just gets slapped right onto the existing wall. They just go bing, and they just slap it up there. And it's only for decoration. It's not structural. It serves no purpose. It's just for looks. That's not what this is. This is built into the building. It's part of the assembly. It is the wall. So it's not just a panel that you could pop off, replace, etc. It's the building. Now, for the Gabion wall side of things, it's also not a traditional Gabion wall. A Gabion wall is a freestanding 3D basket or cage that's been filled with rocks. This is really mostly a wooden box that has been filled with rocks, and then on one side, right at the front of it, we've got a metal cage holding those rocks in there. So not quite a Gabion wall, not quite a wainscot, but it sort of looks like both. That's why I'm calling it a Gabion Wainscot. You can call it whatever you want. However, you should know that a few years from now, I'm going to run into somebody that you know, and they're going to call it something else. And I'm going to say, who did you hear that from? And they're going to say your name. And I'm going to say, oh, that idiot? No, that's not what, listen. I'm the guy that came up with this. It's called the Gabion Wainscot. Your friend is dumb. Don't call it that. That's wrong. So don't take too much license with calling it whatever you want. Now, let's dive right into the building science of it all, because believe it or not, many dozens of people have seen this by now, even before this video goes up. And, I've heard lots of comments, and some people have expressed concerns. And I think once we go through the building science, all of those concerns will be both addressed and alleviated. So, you could call this whole thing here, this whole assembly, Rainscreen cladding. And that top portion is an open joint vertical Rainscreen, and the bottom portion we'll just call an open joint Rainscreen, because it's vertical but also like a Wonkavator. It's sideways, diagonal, every direction. Because these rocks are open joint. They are not held together with mortar or any kind of binding agent. They are loose. And as you can see with the boards above, they're not like a tongue and groove or a shiplap or anything like that. They have a little gap in between each one. So that's the open joint up there. What this means is that things can move through there. Air can move through there. Water can move through there. And technically, animals could move through there. And this is the biggest concern that I've heard from people. Some people are very concerned that I have essentially built an animal house on the outside of my house. One person actually called it a rodent motel. So I've also heard people worried about wasps and scorpions and ants and you name it. We're just going to say animals in general, bugs, rodents, reptiles, all of it. So the thing is, animals do not like living in there. They just don't. And I was a little skeptical myself until I did it, and I've observed it for a while, and I can tell you for a fact, bugs and other little critters, they don't want to live in there. And I can show you some good examples right here to explain this, and I can even sort of prove it to you. So we have to first imagine, let's pretend that we are Ant-Man, and we're going to shrink down to the size of a teeny tiny little critter. And now let's also pretend that the weather is very bad right now. It's raining, it's cold, it's windy. This sucks, we got to get out of this. So I'm like, hey everybody, I know, let's go over here. Remember, we're the size of an ant. Let's go over here, and we're just gonna stand against this wall. Yeah, that is so much not better, because it's not doing anything, because it's just a friggin' wall. We're still getting rained on, the wind is still blasting us, it's still cold. It's not shelter. What the frig am I tripping over? Sorry, I got stupid effing wire over there. Anyway, so yeah, to something teeny tiny, the gaps in that assembly that allow them to go into it if they want to, on their scale, you know, it's like this. It's not a shelter. It's just friggin' rocks. So it was like, and we have to remember that animals are stupid. Okay, and I know everyone's gonna get mad, but the dolphins can play volleyball. I don't care. They're dumb. Animals are dumb, and bugs are really dumb, and so are lizards, and the mice are like a little smart, but they're stupid. So they don't know what a house is. They don't know what a building, they don't have this concept in their brain. It's too abstract for them. They don't, get away from this wall. They don't look at this and think, yeah, man, that's my new place right there. That's a sweet house for me. They don't know what a house is. To them, these rocks might as well just be the rocks on the ground. There's no difference. So, yeah, they're not interested in this like a human would be. They don't see it that way. And my proof, and I use this to prove to myself that this wouldn't be a problem. So over here we have the deck, and I built this deck about 3 years ago. I can tell you for a fact, nothing lives under the deck. Nothing has ever lived under the deck. Do bugs and lizards, etc., sometimes go under there? Like, you know, a little mouse might go down there and just scurry across it yeah, but they don't live in there. And the deck is just this turned flat, and it's on top of a bunch of rocks and gravel just like that. So it's exactly the same, just turned down, but nothing wants to live under there. Now, let me move. Oh my God, this place is a mess. I'm gonna break my neck making this video. I really should have cleaned up before I did this. Sorry, getting these chores out of the way. So, okay. Wow, I'm just like a walking OSHA violation today. If you could see what was going on behind me, you'd fear for my safety. Anyway, things don't want to live in there, I promise. Now, lizards like hanging around in the rock. They love the rocks. Lizards will be just like all over the rocks all day, and that's great. That's something that I actually wanted to happen because the lizards eat bugs and they don't do any damage to the building. So that's natural pest control. Spiders, they kind of dig it. Not as much as the lizards, but like every so often, you know, I'll see like a spider kind of peeking out from somewhere. It's like, hey, Adam. I'm like, hey, little spider. And they also eat bugs. And they also don't damage the materials. So it's all good. Other stuff, not interested. It's too exposed. And because it's too exposed, they could be eaten by the things they would prefer to hide from, because those things can also get in there, like the lizards and the spiders and the bugs that eat bugs. So that's not an issue. Now, funny side note, birds do like to live back here, and they will make a nest behind these boards because the sides are still open. So it's really not an issue, because once the whole building is finished, the sides won't be open, birds can't get in there, and they won't try because they're birds and they're stupid like all other animals. So they don't know how to like take screws off and stuff. So that's the animal thing. It's not an issue, I promise. Now, water, that's the next big thing, the second biggest concern. But you're letting water through. When it rains, water's going to get in there. That's actually the whole concept of a rain screen, especially an open joint rain screen. Let the water in and then let it right back out. Yeah, water can get in there and then it can come right back out. That's why it's not a problem. Now, you would be surprised, I was surprised. You would be surprised how much water does not get back there. It's barely anything. And this has been through several rainstorms. We actually had the rainiest fall that we've had in 100 years or something like that. It's rained a lot this fall. It's almost like the monsoon season never ended, like it's still going on. So this has been rained on a lot, and I was surprised. I knew a lot of water wouldn't get back there, but I was surprised that it's barely anything. So that's not an issue. Now, I know there are some people who still think that the best thing to do is to just seal up your cladding or your siding nice and tight. Get it really tight, get it watertight. Don't let water through in the first place. That's the best way to do it, according to some people. The issue with that is you can do that, and let's say you do a good job and it works. It works really well for the first year or 2 or 3, 5, etc. But 10 years down the road, 15, 20, things start to move around. They don't stay perfect forever. They change a little bit. And eventually, moisture is going to find a way in. And once it's in, because it had such a hard time getting in the first place, it can't get out. It's trapped in there. And then it starts to accumulate, and that's when you get big problems. So again, the concept here is we just let it out. There's no way we can trap it in. Think of it like this. It's like that really annoying friend or neighbor who just keeps like dropping by all the time. They're not getting the hint. They just keep coming over and they want to come in and they want to talk your head off. Okay. Let them in, but don't shut the door and lock it behind them. Leave the door, just leave it open. Just leave the door wide open. Keep glancing at it while they're talking. Just keep kind of shifting your eyes that direct to send them that, subconscious hint, like, yeah, go. There's the door, it's open, walk. Keep doing that. And then they're like, blah, 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 blah. And then oh, wow, cool. Yeah. Hey, look, I got to do stuff, okay? And then, oh, okay. And then they leave. And they're out. Because you left the door wide open and they just walked right out. But oh no, what's this? They left their Labubu on your couch. Don't go, hey, you forgot your Labubu. Don't do that. Let them leave, right? And watch them leave. And watch them go out to the parking lot or wherever and get in their car and they're pulling away. And then you pick up the Labubu and you walk it out the door and you go a few feet away from you kind of go right into the pathway that leads to the door and you just leave it there. And then you go back inside. And then when your annoying friend realizes, oh no, my Labubu, and they come back they think they're going to come back in and yap in your face again for another hour. But then, there's the Labubu, and they pick it up and they leave. This metaphor went off the rails, but point is, the bulk water, the large amounts of liquid water, heavy rain, liquid water is kind of dripping back there. That water just drains right out. Gravity pulls that water down to the ground. It just spills right out of the assembly. That's like your annoying friend. The little droplet of water that it leaves behind, that's the Labubu. And the air comes along and it picks up the little Labubu. Well, it's a droplet of water. And it picks it up and it carries it out because it dries away. So the water drains out and it dries out and it's not a problem at all. Because, also think about it like this. The outside of your house is going to get wet, right? Houses get rained on, you can't do anything about it. So you're cladding, whatever, in this case we've got boards. We know that these boards are going to get wet. These rocks are going to get wet. So what? Because it's just going to dry. We don't care. So who gives a crap if the edge of the board or the back of it gets a little wet? What difference does that make? As long as that water is not trapped back there, who cares if it wets and then it dries? So that is the open joint Rainscreen concept in a nutshell. Now, let's talk about the actual construction of this, some of the logistics, how it's all put together, materials, etc. I'll start with just like a quick overview of the materials. So we have rocks and steel and solid wood. Pretty good. And as for the rocks in particular, I like to call rocks a forever material. Rocks, stones, whatever. It's a forever material. Because they pretty much last forever. They're not going anywhere. Nothing, they don't rot, right? They don't rot because nothing eats them. They don't get damaged by UV. They don't get damaged by rain. They don't blow away. They're just there forever. Many of these rocks are probably hundreds of years old, thousands of years old, and they're still going to be here long after the rest of the building is dead. So the rocks are forever material. That's great. They also don't burn, which is very good. So we've got nice little bit of fire mitigation happening here, right? Because these boulders aren't going to catch on fire, and that sort of the rocks here take up a lot of surface area, makes that surface area non-flammable. So that's a little benefit too. And then, steel and wood, also very strong materials, pretty long lasting, could be here for many decades. So that's our materials. Now, as for the assembly, so, all right, well, number one, like every Rainscreen, essentially, that's not technically true, but like most Rainscreens, we have battens. In this case, I have horizontal battens because I live in a desert climate. We don't get enough precipitation that it's really going to matter if a little water hangs out on the ledge of one of these boards. It'll just dry away. It's not a big deal. In damp climates, horizontal battens are, frowned upon a little bit. You'd maybe be better off with vertical or diagonal or lattice. But over here, the horizontal battens are fine. We have 10 of those. Those are 2x4s. We have 10 of those going from the bottom all the way up to the top. And those battens are what everything else is secured to. So the other elements of the Rainscreen are not fastened to the plywood sheathing. They are fastened to the battens. That's the point of them. Also, the point of the battens is to create an air gap behind the cladding. So we have a very wide, by the standards of a Rainscreen, we have a very wide 1.5 inch air gap. Most common would be 3/4 of an inch, about half the thickness, all the way down to 1/4 inch. And that air gap allows for the airflow, the convection that promotes quick drying of any moisture that gets back there. This is also, for me, it's not just a rain screen, it's also a sunscreen and a sound screen. So these boards, because I have that, and you can see it happening right here, because I have that wide air gap, they're shading the rest of the building. And it works. It works very well. Just think of it as like, just like a day like today, it's super sunny. That yellow sun is powering up my Kryptonian blood. And but it's too sunny and your head is hot. So you put a big hat on your head or you put something over your head and then you feel better because your head is shaded, even though that thing's just right above your head. Exact same concept, and it works. And I can tell you some real numbers. So for example, when this is getting blasted with direct sunlight, the outside, the surface of those boards could get up to 150 degrees, no problem. But on the back side, on the inside of the building, that side of the wall is only 75 degrees. Huge difference. And what's happening is, as the radiant heat hits these boards, they start to heat up, but they're thick boards, they're 2x. So it takes a while for these boards to really, let's just say, fill up with that heat. And then that heat starts to radiate off the backside, but it has to travel this long distance through the air. So there's just not much heat transfer from the outside to the rest of the assembly. There's not a direct conduction of heat. If these boards were flat up against that wall, screwed right into the plywood, I would not have painted them this dark green color. That would have been a problem. I would have gone for a light color because they just get way too hot and actually send that heat into the rest of the building. But this shade screen provided me with the luxury of choosing any color, any shade that I like, and also that my wife likes, because she's really the one who makes those decisions, of course. Now, I completely lost my train of thought. We were talking about how this was put together. So, start with the battens. Now you can see I have a new section that I'm framing here, and what's going to happen here, those are also 2x4s, and this is just common lumber, and I might touch on that a little more in a minute. So we have this 2x4 frame that's being constructed, and it has, I'm trying to think, it really has, I guess you could say, 4 layers to it if we start with battens, and then the next layer, and then the next layer, and then the final layer. So these areas here are going to get filled in like so, and then that's going to get the metal wire stapled over it. Now this metal wire, so we actually have 2 wires, 2 layers. We start with some chicken wire, or if you're pretentious, you could call that poultry netting. Purpose of the chicken wire is to keep small stones from slipping out, And then over that, we have the 14 gauge welded wire. You could also call that field fencing, and that's providing the bulk of the strength. And both of those materials are galvanized steel. So they have rust resistance. I'm not going to say they're rust proof, but it's going to take a very, very long time for rust to start to accumulate on those steel wires. So that wire will get stapled across here. And I'm using rolls that are 4 feet by whatever length, 50 feet, 150 feet. I buy big rolls like that. And then I just cut off as I need them. So that wire is going to get stapled there with 1/2-inch staples, just regular staple gun. That's just to hold the wire in place. And then a final layer of 2x4s that mirror the assembly behind. Those get screwed over the wire. And that is actually what's really clamping the wire to the assembly so it can't fall off. It's not going anywhere. Those boards are also clamps, and those are really doing the heavy lifting, and those are held in with big construction screws. After that, the rocks get filled in from the top until it's filled up all the way, and then a wide 2x board gets capped over that. Well, it's just one, and then I do it. The long vertical boards, they're multi-width, so they're mostly 2x4s, but we also have some 2x6s, 2x8s. I like putting the wider boards near the corners to make the corners more pronounced, makes them seem a little bigger. But there's also just, some randomness to it. I think it just makes it a little bit more visually interesting, but that's a minor pretentious thing. Well, it's a minor thing that's majorly pretentious. On a more, Jesus H. Christ with these wires. Sorry. Boy, that wire just completely stripped me of what I was thinking about. Multi-width. There actually is a function to using boards that are of a mixed width, because let's say I was only using 2x4s and I had an exact spacing between each board. What would invariably happen is at some point I would get to a corner where it's like a little too skinny for a full 2x, and it's so hanging over too much, or it's not quite meeting the end, and now I've got to rip some weird 1-inch or 3/4-inch strip to fill the gap, and it's a pain in the wazoo is what I'm saying. So if you go with the mixed width or multi-width approach, you can just mix and match, and you'll basically get the fill or the span that you need without any fuss. So that's really the main purpose of using a mixture of different boards. But I also think visually it's kind of neat. So that pretty much covers how all of this is put together. I'm not going to do a full step-by-step tutorial, certainly not in this video. If enough people ask me, maybe a future video, I'll just do a video where we just build one of these together in real time. Because I'm doing it in 4-foot by 8-foot sections, but don't have enough time for that in this video. So hopefully you just get it. Just get it. Please just get it. Because I don't actually want to make that other video because I'm lazy. Another thing about the construction of this, the assembly of it, the engineering, let's say, that's the word I'm looking for. Another thing about the engineering here. So before I really got busy on all of this, I did a tiny little mock-up where I think I actually did it like right around here, where I just took like a few 2x4s, screwed them to the wall, just chicken wire, stapled over that, and I filled it with rocks to see what would happen. Because I crunched the numbers on this and found out that every 4-foot by 8-foot section is holding up about 1,000 pounds of rocks. And that is a real number. I'm not just pulling it out of my wazoo. So right here, we've got about 1,000 pounds of rocks, give or take 100 pounds, let's say. And then we also have the weight of the rest of the assembly, and boards are also heavy, especially when you have many of them like this. So I was quite nervous that this was going to want to just come right off of that wall. Something interesting that I found out quickly is that counterintuitively, the rocks are not putting a literal ton of outward pressure onto the cage. Most of the weight is getting transferred down to the brick ledge and then down to the ground. So it's just fine. And I'm sure that, you could grab hold of this with 2 hands and try to yank it off. You'd yank your arms off before you yanked this off the rest of the building. It's just not happening. So that's really not an issue at all. And something else I learned that I thought was pretty interesting is that in some spots, if we get close up, like right there's a spot, and right, I've tried to get an angle, you do see like a slight curve, a little bit of a bulging, we could say. It's not what you think it is. It's not that these rocks right now are just trying to spill out of there, and they're just constantly putting so much weight on that wire that it's bending and giving. Here's what's actually happening. It's one of 2 things, or sometimes both. What's really going on is that sometimes the wire itself just has a slight curve to it because it comes in those rolls and it's rolled up tightly. So sometimes it just, even after you roll it out and you flatten it, it still just has like a bit of a bend to it, and it just stays like that. It's not the rocks pushing it out. Another thing that can happen is that when I'm filling it with the rocks, I get my hand back there and I'm dropping them in. And as they start to fill up, but I'm still dropping them from high up, especially the larger rocks, they have this hammering effect when they fall. So the weight, that impact of the rock falling, boom, and hitting the pile, it kind of hammers it down. And then that compresses everything and pushes it out. And it pushes on the wire a little bit. So in this indirect way, if you're not careful, the dropping of the rocks can hammer the rocks and then hammer the wire. It's like it's giving it a little bip, 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 to come out, and it actually bends the wire a little bit, and then it's just like that forever. But still, it's not really the weight of the rocks trying to bust out of there. Now, listen up here. So, let's go to architecture school for a moment, which is, in fact, literally, definitively, categorically, the most pretentious school in the world. And this is coming from a guy who did a semester at the School of Music in college. So if I'm calling architecture school pretentious, anyway, it is. It's really. I just pissed off every architect watching this, except they don't watch my channel, because they don't give a shit what I'm doing. So I can say whatever I want about them. Also, I'm not an architect. I am professionally talking out of my ass. But let's get into some of the design and the architecture, if you will. Now, I'm going to step back. And once again, I'm going to try not to break my neck. Okay, so this bottom portion with the gabion, with the rocks at the bottom and everything, that whole, from there down, we could call that rustication, I think. Some snob's going to be like, well, technically, whatever. I'm calling it rustication. Rustication is when you put a rough sort of, like rough surface masonry, kind of like a bulky masonry, like wainscot, basically, detail around the bottom portion of the building. And one of the concepts here is that in architecture, it is generally considered a good thing if the lower portion or base of the building looks much wider and heavier than the top of the building. This is something that our brains really like when we approach a building. We're not thinking about it. We don't have to be thinking about it. It's just there in the back of the mind. It's subliminal. It sends this signal to our brains that, oh, this is a strong, sturdy structure. It's a strong building. It's not going, look at how strong that base is. It's not going to tip over or fall down on me. So I can safely walk around this and I can walk inside of it and nothing bad is going to happen and I'm going to be safe inside of it. That's what's happening in our lizard brain when we see a detail like this. And in the case of this building, it's not just the case that the lower portion looks wider and heavier. It literally is wider and heavier. So that's one part of my decision as a fake architect that went into this. Another thing I like about it, well, actually, before I go to that point, I was about to skip over something. Along the same lines as the concept of having this more robust bottom portion, I like that this is made out of real rocks, real steel, real wood, because most of us, those of us that are not idiots, we recognize that immediately when we walk up to the building. We know this isn't some fake stuff. We know, those are real stones. Those are real boards. And we know that these are strong materials. So I think it has that similar effect on our mind, even if it's just unconscious. It just sends the signal, this is a strong building. And I am very insecure about my strength, so I'm overcompensating for that with this building, obviously. Now, another little fancy pants, smarty pants thing that I like about this, from a design point of view, is that when I sheathed the building, I was bummed out. It made me unhappy, even though, it's necessary, you have to sheathe the building, but it made me unhappy for a long time up until now, because I much preferred looking at, oh my God, the sun. I much preferred looking at the bare exposed frame, because I think it just looks so cool. Because it's like looking at a skeleton. It's the same reason like we go into a museum, we see dinosaur skeletons, and we're fascinated. And with a building, when you can see the frame, it's fascinating because you really see how it's put together. You see the bones of it. And then the plywood sheathing went over it, and it got painted with white paint, and it got ugly black tape over the joints, and it looked ugly and it looked stupid, and you couldn't see the frame anymore. And then I know what's behind the plywood. My wife knows what's behind the plywood, but anybody else, like, they don't know. Anything could be behind that plywood. The worst frame ever built could be behind that plywood. How would you know? So again, I liked seeing the frame, and I was proud of the frame. I thought it was I still think it's a very good frame, sturdy, well built, etc. So anyway, without, jacking myself off anymore, the cladding is like a new opportunity for me to get a similar effect. I deliberately did it in such a way that you can sort of see how it's built. I'm not trying to conceal the construction of it. I'm not trying to, for example, you can see, if you look closely, those dots, right? You can see the penetration marks from the fasteners, the screws. I'm not going to like fill that with a putty and sand it and paint it and completely hide it. I also functionally don't want to do that in case I ever want to pop a screw out. So I'm not trying to hide. And, again, anybody who knows even a little bit about building, can recognize these as 2x material, 2x4s. I got a 1x6 there, 2x8 there. Like, they know what these things are. So the building is sort of showing you how it's built. And it's also showing you right on the outside, it's showing you what the rest of the building is made of. It's like its guts are exposed on the outside because the rest of the building is made out of solid boards and metal and rocks. Just these exact rocks in the foundation encased in concrete. So, just to reiterate, everything that the building is literally made of is now being literally exposed on the outside, but in a, designed, hopefully aesthetically pleasing way. Might as well touch on some of the geometry and the patterns that we have going on here. And also I wanted to say that this is not, putting this together, it's not complex, but it is complicated. And what I mean by that is you don't have to be a friggin' genius to put this together. I'm not, I don't have a chalkboard that I'm drawing equations on. Oh, move this here. No, it's quite simple. But it takes a lot of steps, and they have to be done carefully, and it's really just a tedious process. So skill level, I would not rank this as beginner, and I would not assign a project like this to a beginner, but intermediate. You don't have to be a master. You don't have to be friggin' Larry Hahn, which is probably the only guy who ever got famous for swinging a hammer, except for that guy that worked on the railroad track. Whatever. Anyway. Complicated, not complex. Patterns and geometry, also not complex, not even really complicated. Basically, we just have, get the sunlight out of my camera. We just have rectangles within rectangles within rectangles within rectangles within rectangles. Oh my God, I'm having an acid flashback. Whew. Who designed this building? Alex Gray? It's gonna end up on the cover of a Tool album. Oh wait, I designed it. Speaking of trippy artwork, there is also a sort of MC Escher thing that's gonna start to happen as this more and more of this wraps its way around the building and around corners. So for example, you see the face of this corner right here, and then over here you see the face of that corner, and your brain thinks that the face of this corner is going to look like the face of this corner, but the face of that corner is actually going to look like the face of this corner, and sort of so on and so forth. So as you're moseying around the building, your brain is expecting certain things to be on the other side, but then when you get there, it's going to be like, oh, wait, that's not what where am I? Hold on. There's like a Mobius strip effect that's going to happen. I really didn't have to walk all the way over there to demonstrate that, but wow, this is a big building. That was a far walk. I like to call it the Big Little Building, because it's not really a big house, but somehow when you're standing next to it, it's big. I don't know. What am I talking about? So, I think, and now we the design stuff. Talk about colors, paint. So, painted with a high quality 100% acrylic paint that is also a non-combustible paint. I don't think that's anything that special anymore these days. I think most good exterior paints are non-combustible. That doesn't mean it's fireproof. It just means that the paint itself would not easily burst into flames. That's all that it means. It's not intumescent paint. Intumescent paints is a different animal. It's like 4 times the price, and that stuff actually turns into a flame-proof foam when flames are exposed to it. But we're not going to get into all that. Sometime later next year, 2026, probably around the summertime, I'm going to do a whole video just all about fire. But yeah, we're not getting into that today. But going back to paints and colors, so here's a little design tip coming from an amateur. If you're doing an open joint Rainscreen, or even like an acoustic slat wall on the inside of your house. Also, I forgot to mention when I called this a sound screen. Yeah, so it's basically like a giant acoustic slat wall on the house. It's going to block a lot of sound from transmitting into the building. We don't have to get into it. Going back to the paint, you're going to be tempted to paint the back of it black. But you don't want to do that, because in reality, which is like where we live, I mean, that's all there is really, shadows are not black. So like the ground, right? Like, see a shadow there. It's not black. If it was perfectly black, you wouldn't be able to see any of the details there. It's just a darker shade of beige or whatever that is. Right? So if you paint the back black, you're going to get this stark, sharp, zebra stripe kind of look to everything. Too much contrast, especially if the boards on the front or whatever it is are a light color or white. And you might be after that. You might like that. But even from, let's get far away. Even from a far distance, you could maybe end up seeing like some really sharp black lines, just bing, 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 and then it looks like your house is striped. And again, maybe you like that, but most people, that's probably not what they're going for. It just ends up happening, and then they're like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. So what you want to do instead is, if you are using a dark color like I am, I'm using this dark shade of green, I say just paint the back the same color. And then you get nice shadows. And if you do see through a little bit, you just see more of the same. You don't really see exactly what's going on back there. If you're using a light color on the outside, then just do something dark but not too dark. You could do a dark green like this, a dark blue or dark brown, just not perfectly black. You also don't want to, like, you know, let's say we were painting this white. You don't want to leave the back white because that might still just reveal too much when you see through. You get the idea. So that's my design tip for the day. That's probably my design tip for the entirety of this channel. Now, we chose this color, so I deliberated over the color for a long. See, I have to switch between scientist and artist often, and sometimes I get really stuck in one mode or the other. And the scientist in me hated the idea of a dark color, let alone a dark green, because we live in this hot and sunny climate. And I just had to keep reminding myself, yeah, but the boards are going to shade the rest of the building. The color doesn't matter. And I finally just, yeah, it doesn't matter. Just go with what you like. And so, and that's true. It has turned out to be the case that the color really doesn't matter. So we went with this, it's called Ginger's Grotto. I had a whole bit about that name. My wife and I concluded that the grotto belongs to Ginger from Gilligan's Island, and she painted it green. So it's called Ginger's Grotto, and yeah, it's hard to describe. It's this very dark green color that we fell in love with because it looks different all the time. From different angles, different lighting, different time of day, day and night. It never looks quite the same. And like right here, for example, from this angle, it has this bluish quality to it seems like, which I think is really just the sky reflecting off of it. So it almost has this like bluish hue right over here, but then we walk around and it still kind of looks the same, but now it's starting to look a little different, more just green. And if the sun, stupid idiot sun's back there, but if it was earlier in the day and the sun was over here and it was shining directly on it, this would actually be a rather bright green. And then at night it sometimes looks straight up black, which I think is cool, but we didn't have to commit to black. So sometimes it's, you get what I'm saying. It's just, it never really gets boring to look at, for us anyway. I mean, we like the color, and I was very nervous about painting the whole building one color because I was worried, what if like a year later or something, what if I just regret it? I get tired, sick of it. I'm sick of like barn red. Should have painted it a different color. Then I want to repaint the whole building, and I would, because I'm a maniac and I'm going through, mania. And then it's like, oh no. And now my wife comes home and there are buckets of paint everywhere and the house is canary yellow, and I'm explaining, yeah, I messed up. This eliminates all of those potential problems. Okay. We're going on an hour. I'm going to wrap it up. I know there's more I could talk about. Ask away, ask all the questions. You guys know I'm happy to answer questions. I like answering questions, unless they're stupid questions or wrong questions. On my channel, there are wrong questions and there are stupid questions. So don't ask me stupid, wrong questions, but ask me good, smart questions, and I will answer all of your questions. And on that note, I'm going to go. Peace out. See you later. Bye. Bye.